Good day to you, and no matter what time of day you're watching this video, how much time have you already spent on the internet? Yeah, you probably don't even know, right? How amazing is that? How entrenched is this mass medium in our lives that we don't even really know how much time we're spending on it? Well, that's the way the internet is. It's into us, and it's the newest mass medium that we're studying in this class. It's not a traditional mass medium or a legacy medium like television, radio, newspapers, magazines, and books. It's an online medium, and it pushes us in a new direction in this class as we start to consider the internet. Like radio, the internet was not conceived originally as a mass medium. Radio is point-to-point communication, and so is the internet. And we'll find that out later on in the instructor video. Also, the internet is still establishing itself as a place where companies can make a profit because we've grown up with the internet, we being the audience, believing that it should be free. We expect it to be free. Companies today are still trying to figure out what's the right mix of business and pleasure and freedom to try and make it work as a business medium. Also, traditional media are still figuring out what their relationship is to the internet. What does TV do with its content and the internet? Does it put it out there for free? Does it restrict it? Does it ask people to pay for it? Does it get advertisers to allow TV to go on the internet and also be free on the internet? There's a relationship there that's still working out between radio, TV, and the internet. Also, when we talk about the internet, we can't fail to talk about social media. Social media are a huge chunk of internet use. And the rise of social media platforms here in college settings, Instagram is probably the most popular social media platform. Perhaps Facebook is the biggest all over the world. Twitter, of course, that's a huge chunk of the way that the internet is used. So let's talk about the history of the internet. We're going to start with the year 1964. In 1964, there was an engineer. His name was Paul Baran, B-A-R-A-N. And he was tasked by the military with coming up with a computer communication network that could survive a nuclear strike. That means if a bomb landed in the United States, it would not take down a computer communications network. And so what he did was he developed something called packet switching. Packet switching cuts messages into little bits and pieces, ones and zeros, and then chains of ones and zeros, and then it sends them out. And the packets will follow the easiest route to get from point A to point B. So if point A involves going from New York City to Los Angeles, and Denver happens to be out because of a power outage, packet switching is going to allow that communication to move to Salt Lake City, Utah, for example, and then on to Los Angeles. Packet switching is all about moving across a network that is not centralized. It can go the best route, just like your GPS takes you on the way to New York City. Now let's talk about how the internet was actually invented. It was actually in its earliest form called ARPANET, A-R-P-A-N-E-T, ARPANET. Stands for the Advanced Research Projects Agency. It was a wing of the military, and it was a wing that was tasked with trying to study how people could use computers to improve communication. Imagine that. Such a noble task. How can computers improve communication? And this project was applied in university settings, not at military bases. It was taking place off the military base at several universities on the West Coast. Stanford University was one, UC Santa Barbara, if these names mean anything to you, and the University of Utah. And so the ARPA network grew up in a university setting, but it was designed by the military. Now, the protocol of the language that is used on the internet is called TCP/IP. TCP/IP. I say protocol, that's the rules that govern how to communicate on the internet. And this was developed in 1973. And one of the first companies to come out of the TCP/IP network was Quantum. Quantum, founded in 1983. Quantum later became America Online. America Online developed Instant Messenger. Instant Messenger today is used essentially by Facebook. In the early years, the internet was driven by email. That's what the internet was all about. In 1972, Ray Tomlinson, that's his name, he developed the file transfer program that allowed email to be sent from one computer to another. So Ray Tomlinson is the person that we credit for the invention of email. And he's the one who came up with that ampersand sign. You know, your email address always has your name and then at. That was Ray Tomlinson and the protocol that he developed. Now, of interest to you perhaps is on Facebook, if you're a Facebook user, you have instant messaging, and you also have instant messaging on AOL. That is a completely different protocol, or it involves a completely different protocol to send an instant message. And that's why there is no common standard for sending instant messaging. That's why Yahoo can't communicate with AOL, AOL can't communicate with Facebook, etc. They have different languages in essence for instant messaging. Now, one of the first uses of the internet as it started to grow is as group communication. After personal communication, the internet became used in group communication. Listservs and news groups were very important drivers of bringing the internet to the next level. In listservs and also in discussion groups, you often have a moderator, somebody you have to submit your material to, and they have to approve it before they send it out to everybody on the list. When did the internet actually become mass communication? Well, it became mass communication when the World Wide Web was developed, or the WWW. We don't even think twice about it anymore. In 1990 and before 1990, the internet was used mostly for email. I remember those days. I remember when the internet was not invented. I wasn't there for that. But I remember 1986, 1987. I was at Penn State. My professors were saying, you have to turn your assignments in online. No hard copies will be accepted. And that was a mind blower. And the way that we were communicating was typing on keys and sending email messages on a black screen with amber colored letters. Very primitive. Amber colored is like the color of that cabinet behind me. That was what we were looking at with the computer in the 1980s. That all changed. That all changed in 1990 when Tim Berners-Lee from the UK comes along. Tim Berners-Lee, he's the guy who's credited for inventing the World Wide Web, if there is a person. And his background is he owned a book from the Victorian era, which was an era in England when Queen Victoria was in power, 1800s, early 1900s. He owned this book called Inquire Within About Everything. Inquire Within About Everything. And he had this idea from reading that book, which has a title that suggests a lot. Why couldn't there be a place where you could find out everything that you want to know? That's the internet. And that's what he did to develop the software to allow the internet to be used as the World Wide Web. What he did was he developed the URL. That's the address of internet content. He developed HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. That's the protocol for sending and receiving internet content. And he developed HTML, which is Hypertext Markup Language, which is programming language that creates web pages. You know, there's that interactive content that you can click on and go other places. And he wanted the internet, Tim Berners-Lee, to be free and decentralized. He did not want anybody to ever gain control over the internet as a central power, either a government or a corporation, and to charge money for it. And based on that principle, the internet has grown up. Now, we do want to credit another person here who added to the World Wide Web, Ted Nelson. Ted Nelson invented hypertext. Hypertext, or links, is that ability to click on something and go this way into the document, deeper into the document. We also want to credit Stanford researcher Doug Engelhart. Doug Engelhart invented the mouse. Yeah, Google the original mouse, and you will see a very primitive looking thing. That was Doug Engelhart who invented that. Now let's talk about some of the history of browsers on the internet. The very first browser that became well known was Mosaic, M-O-S-A-I-C-K, M-O-S-A-I-C. Sorry. So this was a browser that was a turning globe on the screen as it searched for information, but it was too slow. So it went away, and the next browser to come along was Netscape. And then that went away, and now we have Google and all the other browsers that you're able to use. Let's talk about broadband and exactly what that means. Broadband is like a highway. And if you have 3 lanes going into a city, broadband expands that to 6 lanes so that you have more room to go into a city. Broadband is provided to not all of the United States, but most of the United States. And only 63% of the total of Americans actually have broadband, which is one of the reasons it's an issue in the United States, because it's an issue of fairness. Do people in poorer areas have access to the internet at the same speeds that people in richer areas have access to? Are you waiting a long time for those web pages to load? Now let's move to the balance between traditional versus new media. Finding the right balance as both an industry professional and as a consumer is very, very different, very, very difficult. Movies, which we've already talked about, is one area where the balance is still being played out. To what extent do you put the content of the movie completely on the internet, where people expect it for free, versus putting snippets on, what we would call trailers, to entice people to purchase a ticket into the theater? We're finding that balance still being teased out between all areas of content, between legacy media and newer media. Film, we mentioned, but television, radio, still trying to figure it out what to put onto the internet. Now let's highlight social media. Social media ostensibly is just sharing our lives online. That's all we're doing, right? Well, not really. When you are online, you are a prosumer. Do you know that term, prosumer? That means you're not just consuming content online, you're actually producing content. Every keystroke that you type, every time you like something on Facebook, every time you share something, that's being recorded and it's put up into the sky in what's termed big data. And that big data is being sold by Facebook and others. Facebook just received a huge fine for violating privacy agreements with its consumers. Facebook, but at the same time, making record profits. Facebook shares that information. I use share. It actually sells it. It sells it to companies like Hewlett-Packard and IBM who are looking to sell products to consumers. And that's why ads are popping up in your Facebook feed all the time. It's a brilliant idea, but it's really about sharing ourselves online. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, he founded it while he was a student at Harvard in 2004. And he was working in a dentist's office. And he said, I just want to create a software program that will allow us to notify our clients that the doctor is about to see them. It was like an intercom system. That's how Facebook started out as. We also have Twitter. Twitter is not a moneymaker. It's not a profitable company yet. 3 dropouts from college developed Twitter. It's a micro blogging platform. Blogging stands for weblog. And it has a limitation on it of 280 characters. And it is different from Facebook and from the point of view that it's an open system. Anybody can access information on Twitter. All you have to do is seek it out. Versus Facebook is a closed system. You have to seek out somebody's friendship, and they have to accept you as a friend. All right, now let's talk about aggregator sites. Aggregator sites are those sites that collect information on the internet and then total it up and then present it in terms of trends. So we have different aggregator sites. One of them is Reddit, R-E-D-D-I-T. It's known as the front page of the internet. Actually, Yahoo, Google, web browsers, they are also aggregate sites because every time a person is searching for something on the internet, it's being compiled into a database in terms of what is being searched for. And that's what aggregate sites do. Now, we haven't said that much about video games in this class, but video games really became a form of mass communication because of the internet. Prior to the internet, people played video games in their houses, in their basements, really, in their rooms. But the video console is what broke through with PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, and then later Blu-ray. All that pushed video games into the realm of mass communication, reaching millions of people. And right now, as I'm sitting here, my son may very well be on his computer playing a video game with people from all around this neighborhood and also people across the world. And that's what video gaming is all about, is like. Now, one of the things that the web is credited for in terms of democracy is that it does give individuals a voice. Prior to the web, if you wanted to get to the masses of people, you had to be lucky enough to be covered by a news report by NBC or CBS or one of the big networks. Today, you can jump on YouTube, you can jump on your social media platform, you can put something out there that may, if you're successful enough, be spread to hundreds, thousands, even millions of people. And let's not forget what that word blog comes from. That word comes from web log. It's like you're logging in to say something on an individual basis, like a diary. It's an individual's musing. Now, on the internet, one of the primary ways that we interact with it is through search engines. Search engines are tools that we use to find information on the web. They use what are known as algorithms. Algorithms are formulas for determining how to rank the information that's presented to you when you do a search. And the algorithms come up with the most popular items, but algorithms are also influenced by companies that are buying ads to have their product rank at the top of your pages. Now let's talk about the internet and society. The internet works to permit independent use of computers, and that's very different from traditional media, which is done in masses, and the content is created by a handful of producers. If you watch TV, if you listen to radio, if you read newspapers, the producers themselves are big companies, and there are a few of them, and then you're getting their content. The internet is very, very different. It's mostly user created. That's why we refer to people who use the internet as prosumers. Also, we can say that the internet is largely uncontrolled when it comes to content, whereas radio and TV are regulated in terms of obscenity and committing libel and lots of other areas where you cannot transmit certain content. The internet is wide open. It's free. And there's even the dark web, right? I've never been on the dark web, but there's that whole underbelly of the internet where you can go there, you can hire assassins, you can buy drugs. Yeah, that's the dark web. Let's move to that term hacker. That's a term that we use in common language to mean breaking into something, but there's actually a term that term actually has a value system to it. Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple, actually had a hacking team on Apple, and maybe that team still exists. What exactly is a hacker? Well, it's an ethic, and it's an ethic that's summed up in a book called Hackers by Stephen Levy. And he says it's people who like to program computers and use them to their fullest potentials. That's all that a hacker is. And they have to mistrust. I shouldn't say that's all there is. There's a certain code of conduct that comes with it too, including all information should be free. That's why hacking is allowed. You should mistrust authority. That's why hacking also should be allowed, so you can expose authority. And you should be judged when you use the internet by your skills, not your degrees, not your age, not your race, not your position, not your status, just simply by your ability to use the internet. Now, that term cyberspace is interesting, is it not? Cyberspace, the idea that you can exist in a place that is outside of the physical world. Cyberspace, that's what it is. It's a virtual world. And so many people are stuck in that world all day long that when they come out of that world, looking at their phones and have to communicate with others in person, it can become very, very difficult. There is a digital divide in this country, unfortunately, a divide between those who have the internet and those who do not, those who are poor, those who are rich, those who are minorities, those who are majorities, those who live in cities, those who live in rural areas. This is where we see the divide. There are some conflicts about digital media. There are some conflicts about digital media in the area of content, conflicts such as what material is appropriate and what material is inappropriate. What material can children see? What material should children never see? We're talking about pornography. We're talking about buying things. We're talking about violence. We're talking about bullying. These are areas of content that are considered to be within the realm of the law and trying to figure out whether people should be protected from those areas of the content. Another area is digital copyright law. How much of material is free on the internet, and how much should you pay for? And when you take material, should you be paying royalties to the person who created it? If it's an artist, if it's a band, or if it's a painter or a sculptor, and you're using that information, how do you control that on the internet? That's about protecting intellectual property rights. And now we're going to finish up with where is the internet headed? Well, it's difficult to say, just like it's been difficult to say for the other media. But we do know that the internet is the place that convergence is taking place. This is where TV, newspapers, radio, and the web are all coming into a centralized location, usually on a cell phone, but tablets and laptops as well. So we're trying to figure out to what extent legacy media are going to simply morph into internet media, or whether there's going to be a relationship that remains separate where legacy media are putting part of the content on the internet and reserving the ability to make money off the other content in their regular delivery methods. There's the internet. Have a great day.